Today it's time for another, ranking episode where we rank players in Premier League history across, multiple positions. And today, I believe this might be one of the most difficult videos, for all three of us right here, because I'm more than certain that it must have taken quite some time, to come up with a top three. I know I had to, do like several top threes, scrap them, start again before I could settle for a final opinion. And such is the defensive midfield position over the years in the Premier League that you can count up to 10 elite, players in that position. That is how stacked, the Premier League has been. So forgive us in advance for leaving out some of your best names, some of your cult heroes, some of your legends, maybe, because three players means we are going to leave out some of the very best in it. And without wasting time, Max, give us your top three name in no, your number three name rather in the top three defensive midfielders in Premier League history.
Okay, as usual, I'm starting with Man United player, and he is Roy Keane on the third place. I feel like probably someone expected it kind of above, or not even on top three, because people think about him differently. But he won 7 Premier Leagues, he was the leader on the pitch and outside the pitch. But the main problem for me, at least, he was only destroying the game, I feel like. And he wasn't pretty versatile in his game style. He wasn't really good in attack and the passes. He was only destroying the football. Maybe back in the day it was the perfect style of playing for CDMs, but I'd say if you look at the current CDMs, they're much more versatile and they can also go up in attack. So that's why I left him on number 3.
Anyways, Victor, your number three.
Absolute shocker. I was expecting to have Keane on number 1 from Max. Yeah, actually, for once, when it comes to these, I have the same number 3 as Max, Roy Keane. It was tough. It was tough leaving out names like Paul Ince, like Fernandinho, but I am going with Roy Keane. He had a bit of everything. Okay, there was grit, determination, vision, quality, shithousery, everything. A little bit too much of some stuff, but he did have everything. Um, I I was toying with the idea of not including him in my top 3, but not because he was a Man United player, but because he was a bit too much of a bastard sometimes. But in the end, I just couldn't. I couldn't ignore his accomplishments, his trophy cabinet, his overall success, and the mark he left on the Premier League and on some of his opponents.
Yeah, fair enough. And for me, I'm actually going with Makalele as my number three. And when you think about that position, in fact, it was so good that that position was named after him. It was named the Makalele role. And when you think about the fact that compared to Keane and some others, he was actually an unsung hero, and he was very instrumental in a Chelsea defense that conceded only 15 goals. Only 15 goals all season. I think he does not really get the credit he deserves. And talking about the position itself, Max mentioned something about Roy Keane not being able to, do much in attack. But at that point in time, that was the definition of the role. That was what was required of the role. You were not needed to be versatile because your team probably had another midfielder who could do that. So judging by that definition, for me, Makalele is my number three. Anyways, moving on to the number two. Max, your pick.
I mean, this is the player who was called next to Makelele always. It's N'Golo Kante. And I feel like you're not going to agree with that. But for me, at least, his playstyle was kind of similar to Makelele, what he did. But this guy succeeded with 2 different teams, and he was definitely irreplaceable in both teams. He was key for them. He was leading them to everything. And later in Chelsea, we saw that he's not only a destroyer, as we used to think about him, he was also pretty much good in the attack. And also, I cannot forget about his World Cup performance in Russia in 2018. He was brought like not even a starter for me at least. He was expected not to be a starter, but he destroyed everyone. He was the best player of the World Cup definitely, and this is also makes sense for me to put him on number two.
Mm. Yeah, Victor, you're number two.
I don't think this one should be missing from anyone's top three, honestly. But yeah, here goes. Patrick Vieira. He was a surprising player from the start. He was a big lad who was supposed to shut things out, but he was also much more technically gifted than he had the right to be. Uh, he was a true Premier League great. Uh, he has the sort of legacy in the division's history that most players can't even dream of. Uh, it's I know all about a bunch of people saying that Rodri has surpassed him, and I guess in some aspects he has, but this might just be me and my age and my nostalgia, but Vieira will always be regarded as one of the best sixes ever, and not just in the Prem.
Yeah, fair enough. And on that note, my number two is also Patrick, Vieira, and he was just, he was just something else. He was actually unplayable, and I like to define players, based on eras. Yeah, but if I'm going with what Max said, Vieira is actually someone that could do both. He was as much as good defensively as much as he was contributing to attack. He had a good shooting range as well, a good passing range. He had almost everything. And when you're talking about consistency, he was there. Leadership skills as well, he was there. He was pretty much every manager's dream. So Vieira has my number two spot as well. So moving on to the number one, Max, your pick.
It's, it's kind of fun how you mentioned that Vier must be in everybody's top three, and I'm looking at my number one, and it's not him, definitely.
The Sworn.
Okay, here's Rodri for me, actually. I mean, he's been in Premier League for only 6 years now, but his peak when he won treble, he wins Euro, he wins Ballon d'Or, he was the most complete CDM ever been in Premier League for me at least. He's absolutely perfect in defense, in passing, in attack. I mean, at least I didn't see anybody above him in years, and especially in my life. So I'm definitely putting him on number one.
Victor, your number one.
Just the way I felt about Vieira, you probably feel about Rodri that it should be in everybody's top three. Well, it's not in mine either. My number one's Claude Makelele. I just feel like exactly what Colade said. You have a role on the pitch named after you. You know you've made it as a footballer. In stature, he was like the opposite of Vieira, but he was a fantastic number six. It feels like I remember when Kante burst onto the scene, and I kept feeling like, is this his illegitimate child, or what's the deal here? But I can't even remember watching a game that Makelele played and thinking to myself, oh, he should be subbed off. He rarely put a foot wrong. He never ran out of steam. He had extraordinary leadership qualities. He was just a coach's dream. And okay, I'll give you this. His Premier League tenure was not as long as some other players, but he was, I would say, the main player in that transition period of Chelsea when they started to matter again. After the takeover in early to mid 2000s, they were starting to challenge for honors again, and it was him. He was the cornerstone of that team.
Yep, yep. I mean, you can't argue with that logic, to be fair. And I'm sorry to all Manchester City fans. I mean no disrespect, but Rodri also does not make my top three. And not because it's not good, not because it's not quality, but the way I like to see it, Rodri people are forgetting that Rodri joined City in 2019, but he did not start to make his own until about 2021 because when he came, he was still playing with Fernandinho, and he was not really all that good until 2021. That was when he started to, create a name for himself. He was even left on the bench in the Champions League final against Chelsea. So it was really about 4 years ago he started to, eat, those heights. And when you look at that, he has only had about 3 seasons at the top. He doesn't have the longevity compared to some of these guys. Maybe if we were to do this video in 2, 3 years from now, maybe Rodri will be the undisputed number one. But at the moment, I just don't think he has done enough, like these guys. And on that note, my number one is actually Roy Keane. And not because I like Manchester United. I dislike Manchester United. But when you're talking about players that had the moment, the impact and everything, I mean, you just have to look at Roy Keane. The fact that he had the shithouse to go with, it's one thing to have the shithouse and it's one thing to have the quality to back it on the pitch. He was one of those players that would give you the shithouse and would back it with quality on the pitch. It was just so good. And again, when you look at all the top DMs in this category, he's the only one that has 7 league titles. And he was influential. He was influential in about 5 or 6 of them, and his influence for me is just unmatched as well. And the fact that the presence of Roy Keane also made Vieira better, and the presence of Vieira also made Roy Keane better. That alone is something else to go with. So for me, my number one is Roy Keane. And I know fans out there, I mean, will be angry about Rodri, but Victor, what is the reason why you left out Rodri?
In part, the longevity as well, and also because these things are subjective. Okay,
Yeah, sure.
everybody's top three it's a matter of what you liked, not necessarily what was the most technically gifted player out there. So for me, especially being of a certain age and remembering maybe the 90s a little bit better than some of the younger generation, I suppose. Um, I I don't know. It's just it's hard for me to justify. Like, say I would have put Rodri in for third. Can I really leave out Roy Keane? I just like you. I have toyed and scrapped and rewritten
You can
and
leave Vieira or Makelele.
Nah, you can't leave
no,
Makaleli, man.
no,
You
no,
can't
no.
leave
I
Makaleli.
I
can't.
can.
I can't leave
I
Makelele
can leave
out.
both.
Same. I
It
can't leave
was
Makaleli.
for me.
I have improved
Makelele was.
Makelele and improved Vieira on my list.
I don't know. I just feel like Makelele was the quintessential midfielder in general, not just defensive midfielder, but midfielder in general. Back when he was with Real Madrid and coming in with Chelsea as well, he was just that damned good. And I can't leave someone like him out who I enjoyed watching so much for Rodri, who, for better or worse, leaving even longevity out of the question, I don't think he could shine Makelele's boots.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Anyways, we will leave our viewers out there now to join the conversation. Do you agree with myself and Victor for leaving out Rodri from our top three? And do you agree with, Makalele, maybe Roy Keane, or maybe even Rodri as, the best defender, best defensive midfielder in Premier League history? We want to hear your thoughts. Tell us if we also left out, some top names as well. Maybe Paul Ince, even I'm surprised maybe no one even mentioned Yaya Toure, Fernandinho, and other top names as well. So tell us what you think in the comment sections below. Are there some top names that we left out, or do you agree with our list? We'll be waiting to hear from you.